What is up, BG Cast fam? How's everybody doing tonight? Thanks again for joining me for another Wednesday live podcast here. Trimmed up the goatee. I cleaned a little bit cleaner from last time. I've got a really awesome guest tonight. I was grateful enough and had the privilege to be on her show last night, and we had a really killer conversation. I mean, it was really cool. I mean, we probably could have kept talking for another 2, 3 hours, but we have bedtimes and families and all that we got to get to. So, she's had a very interesting awakening. After kind of talking with her a little bit last night and getting to know her, her awakening is very interesting and profound. And the way she went about this, I give a lot of credit because she was very objective about her approach. And, I think more of us should kind of take note of this too. She had some very interesting high strangeness in her childhood that she recalls, and she's remembering more and more of. We're going to dive into a little bit tonight. And she used to be Mormon. So we're going to be digging into the very occult side of Mormonism, which we don't usually get to see very often, but this is going to be highly interesting. So, guys, I want to welcome to the stage Heidi Luv of Unfiltered Rise podcast. What is going on, Heidi?
I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Of course, of course. I was looking forward to this. After our conversation last night, I was really like, man, we have to dive into some of the things that we talked about a little bit further, because I think not only, do I find them very interesting, I think a lot of the listeners and the viewers are going to find it very, very fascinating too. So
Awesome.
let's just get down to business. Heidi, let's talk about your awakening. Let's talk about your burning bush moment and what you
Yes.
did at the initial stages of this burning bush moment, because like I said, I commended you last night for this, because this is really like the way you went about it, and how objective you were. Get right into it.
So I was like a very normie person. I was already far out of the Mormonism by this time, but in 2020, I just saw everything that was happening. And as a registered nurse, this year it will be 25 years. I went, these studies are not matching what they say. And this doesn't make any sense, because I knew about masks. And if you touch it once and then you got to get a new one, and this whole big thing that they teach you in school. And I'm like, this isn't going to work like this. I don't understand what they're doing. People are going to get sick. And so I started looking at JAMA studies and all the things. And mainly it was like, I need to find the answer to why this makes sense now, but it never has made sense ever before like this. And I wanted to basically prove that I wasn't losing my mind, because I was like, this doesn't make sense. I mean, I don't understand. And the more I got in, the more I was like, now it makes even less sense. And now I'm showing studies to other people. And now I'm going through like all these things. And this isn't like junk science. This is JAMA papers, the Journal of Medical Association papers. Is what that stands for. I was going through OSHA paperwork. My husband works at a mine, so they had a lot of talks about different things about this, and I just could not find any hard evidence to support anything that they were doing. And as the asthmatic, I was like, yeah, this is crap. I literally can't breathe. And so
Mhm.
I kept looking because I wanted it to work out, because you don't want to be the person at work that's like, yeah, I don't like any of this. This seems nuts, you know?
Especially in that environment, man, because you're not the first person in that field who I've spoken to who's had this realization. So I got to commend you for that. That must have been a very interesting experience to be in that environment and have these realizations.
Yeah, it sucked, but I was saved by one thing that I never thought would save me. Is I'm severe asthmatic and I'm EpiPen allergic to a whole bunch of things. So my doctor was like, yeah, you probably shouldn't take any of this stuff. And so I was lucky because I was like, yeah, I wasn't going to anyway. And I was probably going to lose my job. So luckily I
Yeah.
didn't have to lose my job. If they had ever asked me to vaccinate anyone, which didn't happen because I work nights blessedly, I would not have done it. I've never gave one, never taken one, and would refuse to do so to this day. It's just not something that I'm willing to breach. But I also tried to like educate people and say, did you see this mask study, or did you see this JAMA study? Did you see this or that? And they don't want to hear it. They treated you like you're nuts, you know? And I'm like, wait, this is like the people you read. Like, this is you're a doctor. You read these studies. Like, what are you doing? And everybody was just social justice warrior. Get out of our way, you dumb lady. What are you trying to kill everybody? You know?
That's so my question is this. My question is, it's like, so I've always theorized that this kind of behavior or this kind of thing comes from the higher ups in the medical institution. I don't know if maybe you experienced something like that while you were going through this or not, but
it was like everything was like, oh, well, we have to do it because corporate. Oh, well, we have to do it because they say, or we're going to get shut down because the CDC is going to come in here. And I'm like, okay, that doesn't make any sense. I mean, okay, like, really, we're going to put tape on the floor for each person to stand at, and we're in a confined area in a lockdown mental patient place where people, by the way, have schizophrenia, and you put a mask on and now you're an evil whatever you are, and it's just scaring the crap out of everybody, you know? And I'm like, this doesn't seem like this is a good idea, you know? Let alone the stuff we saw in 2020. It was probably one of the saddest times to ever have worked in mental health, because we have our people, our core people that come in for certain things like PTSD and stuff like that. And then we have this other group that's like, see you next Thursday, Ted. Like, they're just there a lot, you know? And then we had this group in 2020 that didn't belong. And they were the people that got naked and sat on their roof and waited for the rapture. And I'm not kidding. And
I
I'm
did not
like,
know about this. Oh my goodness.
oh my gosh, it was so bad. We would get them like once a week. The cops would come in with the people and they're like, here you go. And it would always, I'm not sure why you have to take off your clothes. I think if the rapture happens, we're good to leave them on. I think they'll just go wherever they need to go. And probably then you may have stayed on the roof and not got the cops called. I don't know, you know, but this was like a thing. And I felt bad for people. I was like, this is wild, because they actually scared these people to death. And these people were breaking. Yeah. These people were literally terrified to be alive in this world. And that's the same reason why even family members that I had talked to about, like, please just wait. I'm not telling you not to do it. The cure is the cure, but like, can you just wait? Like, this was really fast. This is how it's normally done. This is what happened, blah, 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 blah. That's why it's called warp speed. Like, maybe it's a bad idea. Can we wait a little while? You know, I really love you. Can you wait? No one waited. Everybody was scared. No one waited.
It's that state of mesmerized terror, you know, that we talked about last night. And, you know, I found it interesting because what I was paying attention to at that time is a lot of these really rich, like, philanthropists and like billionaires said they were waiting at least 6 years before they would even consider to take a look at to take the vaccine or whatever it is. Yeah.
Oh, there we go.
And yeah. Oh, you're all good. No, they don't like what we're talking about. It's just what happens.
I know.
Yeah. No, you're all good. You're all good.
It happened last night when we started saying project this and project that.
Yeah. They got their little trigger words and things like that. But no, that's what it is they put that. I mean, it just based on what you're saying there. I mean, you have people who are ignoring. I mean, people who claim to be people of science, who can't claim to, you know, be following this, ignoring actual scientific studies. And apparently this is all coming from corporate. And what I really dug, you tried debunking yourself. Let's talk about that. Like, that is just too cool, because like that's a good way to do it. Let's get into that.
I was trying to blue pill myself. Yeah, I was trying to blue pill myself backward, right? Instead of the red pill, I was like, no, I need the blue pill, because I just felt like I wasn't right. I just felt like, well, if this is true, and I feel this way about Mormonism as well when we get into this, I'm like, okay, if I found this online, this is so simple to find online. This did not take that long. I mean, once you go down the rabbit hole, it takes long, but like not at the beginning. And so I'm like, why is nobody listening? Like, this literally doesn't make sense to me. Like, I was like, it's too easy, right? Like, this doesn't make sense. So if I can find it, they can find it, and I can show them, and they still don't believe me. So I was like, I must clearly be wrong. You know, like, there's got to be something that they know that I don't know, right? Like,
you gaslighting yourself. They had you gaslighting yourself kind of a little bit.
Yeah. I was like, help me, help me, help me, help you, help me. Like, I don't know, but I was like, there's got to be some other answer because all these other people around me are like believing this one thing. So I wanted to believe it too, because I mean, you want to be, especially at work. It was really hard at work. So I was like, okay, well, this just isn't going to make sense no matter what I do. Like, I can't find one single thing that makes a lot of sense. So therefore, I'm like, hypothesis is it doesn't make sense. So, nah, yeah, I just
I gotta
kind of
give
had
you
to give up.
I got to give you credit for that though, man, because like, I completely understand the situation. And I can completely empathize with your state of mind at that point of time as well, because, it's your job, it's your career, it's what supports you, it's your livelihood. And here you are face to face with the truth. But then this greater collective of people working with you is buying the lie.
Yeah, and your parents and also I don't think I mentioned this, but the church pushed this narrative. The Mormon church came out and said everyone should get the cure because it's great for everyone. And that right there triggered me really hard because I was like, wait a minute. We don't give medical advice to people in a generic, let's just give that to people because everybody's different. And you might have endocrine problems, and he might have cancer, and they might have diabetes, and they might have a thyroid problem, and whatever's going on. We never go, yep, it's great for everybody. Everybody should do it, especially kids. And I was like, okay, not the kids. Like, we're
Yes.
definitely not touching children here. For me, I yanked my kids out of school. They homeschooled for a year and a half, and they were not
That was a
happy
good
with me.
move. That was a good move, though. I think as a parent, like that was a good job. I commend you for that because, yeah, no, it overall it messed up everything. It messed up a
It
lot
did.
of things. It messed up kids, but no, let's keep on rolling. So, like,
Yeah.
eventually, what I was going to say is this led to your awakening. This led to
Kids.
you kind of getting into and just that igniting that divine spark within you. And like, I guess like what I want to ask is, when did it really come full circle at that point for you?
So I think I kind of had it in the back of my mind that everything was a lie right there. And you only have to have one thing, honestly, as a conspiracy theorist that breaks you, right? Like, you have to have one conspiracy where you're like, oh my gosh, this might be true. Well, what if they're right about this other thing, right? Like, and so you start looking, especially if you have time off work and everybody's staying at home together, you start like listening to a lot of things. I was already a podcast junkie anyways. So I went down
Okay.
more rabbit holes. Yeah. And so I just got really deep. Ryan Christian, if you're out there, Last American Vagabond, he did a stellar job about exposing a lot of this during that time. He has 4-hour shows, and I was listening to them every single day. And I would know the stuff like 2 weeks before the stuff would come out. And my mom would say, how did you know that? And I'm like, because I listened to the people. There's people talking about this. Like, I don't understand. And I kept saying, like, this can't be real. Like, for a while, it stayed that way. And then at the same time, I'd already been out of the church. I was a Christian. I was very lukewarm Christian. Now, when I
Mhm.
say I was a Christian, it means I believe in Christ and the Bible.
Mhm.
Like, I never went back to another church because fool me once, right? um,
Yeah,
can't be fooled again. No.
I'm
um,
with you on that.
yeah, yeah, it was too much. And so I believed, but I never really delved into that either. Cause like, why, right? I mean, like, oh, I'm over here doing all these other things. And so I actually lost my daughter at this in 2020 also. She didn't die. She just estranged from our family and said sayonara.
Mm.
That was really hard and really weird. And it was an
That
ego
sucks.
death
I'm
for me.
sorry. I'm
It's
sorry about
okay.
that. Did it
It's
have
all
to
right.
do? If you don't mind diving into it, was it
Nope, I share
because?
everything. Yep,
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
not the
yeah.
shot. It's not the shot, it wasn't religion. She met a guy, the guy met us twice, he didn't like us, and off we were. So, and now I'm a
That's
toxic
right.
narcissist. I went from her best friend on earth in the planet of the world, and we did everything together, to a toxic narcissist overnight almost, and I was like, "Whoa." And when somebody does that to you, even if you're not one, you start going, well, maybe I am one. Well, what
Mhm.
what I'm going to tell people also, if you are one, you'll never ask yourself if you are. You don't care. So like there's a question right there. Like if you're asking yourself that, you're probably not a narcissist. So not that we all can't be toxic at times. Definitely we can.
Mhm.
I'm guilty as the next person. I have a hot temper and I'm loud. So I started really turning to the Bible because I was so low. I don't know. I've gone through deaths of family. I've gone through divorce. I've gone through, leaving religion, being excommunicated basically of my family from leaving religion, all these weird things. And nothing affected me like that child because
Mhm.
that's your kid, man. And I'm talking a full cutoff, like new phone number, blocked on everything. Don't contact me. Don't talk to me. You're a bad person. And I was just like,
Wow.
"Oh my gosh," like this is, and I just couldn't quit crying. So I just really turned to
Mhm.
God, turned to prayer, turned to the Bible, turned to journaling, and had this own little journey of my own back, like from this
Mm.
horrible, yucky place I went for a while where I didn't want to hurt myself or anything like that, but I just didn't really want to be around, you know. I was
I
fine either way,
understand.
basically. Yeah.
I
They would
understand.
call
I'm
that
sorry.
passive SI at work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But,
I'm
yeah, it happens, and I don't know, it's becoming more and more popular, like, this is like a thing that they're doing to kids now to separate them from their families, because if you don't have a family and you need a therapist, well, that's a paycheck for the rest of your life. If you don't have a parent anymore and you have to call your therapist for every little thing, yeah, you probably have some issues, like it's not healthy behavior. Does that mean you have to stay on the telephone with somebody as they berate you and scream at you? You just go, I'm going to call you tomorrow.
Mhm.
You don't have to do that. You don't have to like suffer through it either. You can say, I'm going to make a boundary with you that I'm not going to talk to you for a couple days. You just have to say it because you can't leave a person hanging because it's really toxic. It's bad behavior. And also,
Absolutely.
yeah, you can't fix anything that you don't talk about. Big surprise.
Of course. No, and like it is. And I think we, as we were like talking about last night on your show, I truly feel like a lot of that can be potentially be purposefully done. We
Yes.
talk about that plausible deniability, and what they were doing, with the orphan trains and things like that up in New York.
Mm.
So no, I'm sorry you had to go through that. I
It's
can't
weird.
exactly understand, but I can empathize 100%.
Yeah. It's weird because like she would, like I said, she wasn't just my daughter, she was my best friend. She was 23 at the time, and she got married without me. She sent me a uninvite, don't show up, basically message. She had a baby without me. That This has been going on for 5 years. And she came to town actually last week. Well, it's been a couple days. And I had to suck up my own pride and say, I'm not going to keep my children from her like she's doing from me, because that would be wrong, because inherently I feel like that's a bad thing to do because
Hmm.
they want to see their sister, right? And you are not invited and stay away from us. And I was like, right. Okay.
Man. Well,
Um,
you definitely, one thing I'll commend you on is your strength for making it through that, because
yeah.
like I said, I'm not a parent. I'm a dog parent, but I'm not like an actual, real full
Yeah.
time parent just yet. But because I look back at the things I did to my parents when I was young, and didn't have my head on or my mind straight at that time, and I can only imagine what you went through. So good on you for overcoming that, and
Yeah.
finding your way through that.
So that was the time where I really became, I think, who I am, a piece of who I am today, because it's always
Hmm.
evolving, right? Like, but that ego death really did need to occur because I figured out something in the midst of it all. And God works in weird ways, and I know that for certain now. Is I definitely made my child an idol. That's not good or healthy, or even healthy for my marriage. Like that bumps my husband, right? Like that's not a healthy thing to do in general. We can love our kids, but honestly, God has his division, like the parents at the top and then the kids, for a reason, like because the kids are going to grow up and move away, and then you're just by yourself now if you haven't put the work into your marriage. So you can't just say, well, too bad, you have to get yourself together that way. And it did help me do that. And it helped me develop and change what I was doing, how I was doing it, why I was doing it, like figure some things out. You know, you really have to look at yourself. When somebody says, here's a mirror, you suck, basically, you have
That's
to go, well,
a,
maybe I do suck a little, you know?
I can completely, it's about being honest with ourselves, especially, I think that's something more of us on our spiritual evolutions that, we have to do that just a little bit more, and take that. But it's good to see that you did that. That's a great thing.
Yeah. Yeah. So that led me down more studying pathways of all of
Mhm.
these uh different conspiracy. I used to think conspiracy was stupid. I was like, yeah, no. I was like all about the murder podcasts. And actually that really isn't a terrible thing to know, but like also your loosh, we talked about loosh grabbing, and I think that's
Yeah.
done for a reason. I think if it's an explanatory way to tell somebody this is why we need to be safe in life, or this is what we shouldn't do, like that's all good. But also like if you just are in it to be gory or whatever the reason may be, like maybe that's not so good, you know?
Mhm.
And I started changing even strange things about my life. Like, oh, I didn't listen to as much music. I was much more happy doing something else or whatever, like different music or more productive things, even if it was as simple as coloring. Coloring is productive, watching TV isn't, right? Like cross
Exactly,
stitch.
100%.
Yeah. Yeah. Be artistic, do something. And it was those small little changes that I was like, okay, this helps me decompress. And also I made something. Like maybe you're not 5 years old and you're not going to give it to your mom, but like you still did it. So
Exactly. I was
yeah.
going to ask with the music, because I think that's something a lot of us, once we get to a certain point of, when we're learning, like I feel you on that. There's just certain bands and certain music I can't listen to anymore,
Mhm.
because I know they're in on it. I know that they were
That's all of them.
fabricated by
Yeah.
Tavistock, yeah, the CIA, and so did you kind of have that same realization too? And was that a reason why, like, you kind of stopped
Um,
listening to certain kinds of music, or?
I think more it's like a TV changed a lot for me that way because I got to the point where I'm like, if this isn't real, I just don't care. Like I don't want to watch, something like Seinfeld back from the past, which I loved back then. Okay. And then now I'm like, wow, this is stupid. I really liked this back then. Like and it's
Mhm.
great for a couple laughs, but now I'm more on the knowledge train where I'm like, I'd rather watch a biography or I'd rather learn something or I'd rather read something or whatever. And so it got different that way, and then music faded down because I'll tell you, I'm a little bit older than you. We talked about this. I'm going to be 48 this year, and I grew up when gangster hardcore rap was the deal, right? And so my son always says like, I'm going to shoot your mama and steal your girlfriend, like that's mom's music, and I'm like, shut up, that's whatever. And he's like, I'm going to curb stomp you. And then I started really listening to the lyrics, and I'm like, maybe so, like maybe. And so I backed off. I love a happy beat. I'm a happy music person. If I'm listening to music, it's never slow. It's always a good, faster tempo. But like, it just did become to a point where I'm like, yeah, this probably isn't helping me be any kind of positive. This is probably
100%.
doesn't mean every once in a while I don't put it on. But now with everything going on, yikes, Diddy.
Yeah,
But
no, it's funny. Did you see the Diddler memes? Oh my goodness, they
oh
they had
yes.
they
Oh
had they
my
had his
god.
head plastered on on the Riddler from Batman, and
Yes.
then they labeled it oh my god, dude, I was dead.
Oh, what the best one is the little short clip of him sitting next to Mike Tyson, and he tries to put his have you seen this?
No, no, no. Let's
Oh
hear
my
this. I've
gosh,
not seen
it's
this. Yeah.
hysterical. You have to watch it. He puts his hand, he tries to get to Tyson in the day back when Tyson was like biting people's ears off. And he puts his hand on his upper thigh. It is a clear thigh grab. And he picks it. I'm not kidding. He's like, and moves his hand like that on TV. And there's this clip of it, right? And I'm like, this is hysterical. And that tells you how much he felt empowered. Like, you're going to try Mike Tyson when Mike Tyson was the baddest mofo out there. Like, that's probably not smart. And he
Exactly.
sat there and looked like he couldn't believe that he would move his hand.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
I
Yeah,
was
I
like,
probably would.
you got to
Probably
find
would.
that clip. hysterical.
Dude, I'm definitely gonna look that up because I most certainly would have done the same thing. I don't care how rich and famous you
Yeah.
are, and if you tried to come grab my thigh or my ass, we're gonna have a
Like,
conversation.
no,
Yeah,
no.
so
And you're like, at some level, whether it's guy on guy, girl on girl, girl on guy, whatever it is, I'm sorry, you don't do that. Like, where were your manners? Like, you don't do
exactly.
that. You don't just sit next to somebody and start grabbing them. Like, Donald Trump got in a lot of trouble for grabbing things. I don't think that it's any different. Okay. Thighs, other body parts, whatever. Keep your hands off people unless you've been invited. So,
Exactly, exactly. Well, you know
yeah.
what? What I want to dive into with you real quick is something we talked about last night and something we've
Yeah.
talked about on the show a lot before. So you were in a gifted program.
I
Yes,
was.
you were
Yeah.
taking. So let's dive into that a little bit. And if you don't mind, I know you can't go into certain details, but let's talk
Only
about what.
because I don't remember a lot, but
And I
yes.
don't want I don't want you disappearing either. So
Yeah,
that's
that's true.
also key and point. Yeah, but let's talk about your experience in the gifted program, and let's talk about what happened when you got in all that trouble and what you did to fix yourself out of getting into that trouble.
Yeah, so the weird thing was when I was a kid, I was always kind of on the fringe of kids, like, and my daughter does it now, and I see it, and she's labeled ADHD, and I'm certain I probably have that. So, I mean, it's definitely, I see it in her. I like, boundary wise, like playing or whatever. I was a little aggressive, like not hurting anybody, but like, oh, you don't want to play? Why wouldn't you want to play? Like, a little bit like that. So my mom did say, like, oh, it's just they kept moving me up classes. They tried to skip me a grade. Then I ended up in this gifted program. And I don't remember a whole ton of this.
Mhm.
She talks to me about it. But one time I was listening, actually, it was on Sam Tripoli when Johnny mentioned being in the gifted program. And he was talking about something that they went through. And I was like, oh my gosh, I went through this, but I thought this was the school psychiatrist. Like, what?
Mhm.
And so I was like, and then the more they talked about it, so I started looking things up because I was like, that can't be real. That's no. This guy came once a week or so and would grab me out of class and do all these weird tests on me. And I'm like, I clearly remember a bunch of things that are mentioned in the GATE program, like later, now that we go back and research, like we talked
Mhm.
about. Mine was bubblegum, yours was, I don't know, I can't
It was
remember.
the
You said
fruit punch, the fruit. So
yeah.
yeah, that's so listeners, you know how when we had nerd in charge and urban official on where they were talking about the banana and I said fruit punch, that mine was like a fruit punch. She had a bubblegum kind. That's very
I did have
interesting.
bubblegum. It's pink. And so I'm like, it's weird because I remember thinking my mom did have to sign. She talked to me about this and she said that they were just gonna help me out because I was super smart and not paying attention in class. And I'm like, okay, whatever. But they were doing so many things. They were doing all this testing and like ink blot tests and weird stuff. And the marble, do you know those steel marbles where you
Oh yeah,
do you
yeah,
remember
yes,
those?
yes, yes.
And I kind of feel like they may have used that to hypnotize a little bit because even to this day, I can self-hypnotize myself, which is weird. Not to like go into a trance, but to go to sleep because I have a hard time sleeping sometimes and I can't and I can hear that noise. And I'm like, maybe that's weird. But I did this for like a year. And then they tried to take me for summer camp in the summer. And my mom was like, and they're like, oh, it's super good because she's super smart. We've done all these tests on her. She's really high up on aptitude, blah, blah, blah. And I already probably knew that. My dad, I don't think I mentioned, but I told you he was a genius, but he was an evil
Mhm.
genius. And he had like multiple patents. He had a really high IQ. He'd also gone to prison. And so, a little bit evil genius there. So even when he died, he had a Ponzi scheme that came back around, which was hilarious. So, to me, the other siblings didn't think so. I was like, funny dad, like whatever.
It's like his
But
spirit is living on, I guess, right?
yeah, it was kind of funny. And so they got their money anyways. They sue the estate, whatever. But long story short is my mom said, I don't think so. And I was so happy that she was like, no, she's not going. And it was kind of a bummer at the time because I remember thinking like, this is special, and you're holding me back. But I'm pretty sure she probably saved me from a world of trouble. I'm assuming.
Absolutely.
So.
Absolutely. I mean, especially because, I mean, you're not the first person I've heard about the summer camps from. I've heard this from a lot of other people as well. And almost like these summer camps have some kind of MK Ultra
Mhm.
kind of programming implemented into them. I remember I was on a show with somebody one time and they were talking about how like they don't even remember it, but all they do remember is they were putting him in this box and they were filling these boxes with these crickets and things like that. Just
Mhm.
very strange things.
Yeah, I'm glad I missed that one because I hate spiders and stuff, but I do have huge holes in my memory. Like I'll look at pictures of like happy things like Disneyland, or I'm like, damn, I really was there. That's weird. Yeah, and I'm not 5. Like, if you're 5
Hmm.
and under, whatever, you might not remember, but I'm like 10. and
Hmm.
and I'm like, why don't I remember this? And then people are like, well, you did have this horrible childhood. And so maybe it was that, because maybe this childhood triggers from like all this, my stepdad was really mean and hit me a lot. And my mom had a lot of problems with him hitting her and all this stuff, or my dad going to prison or whatever was going
Hmm.
on. I'm like, okay, well, maybe it's that, but then how come I can remember all those bad things? Like, it's not that. It's specific stuff, like specific time frames. And then I had a cousin, and I asked him about it. I said, "Hey, I know they had you in that program too." And he's like, "Yeah." And I'm like, "Do you have like huge holes in your memory?" He's like, that show? Oh, I can't remember the name, but it's with the girl. She's a
Oh,
spy.
11. Or no,
Yeah.
not
No,
Stranger
she's like
Things.
a brown-haired girl, and she's in the CIA. I can't remember, but it was a whole series. He's like, "I feel like that's me." And I'm like, "Yeah, I get it." And
Strange.
I'm just like, "Yeah, that's weird." And he's the same way. And I'm like, I think they track families. I really do. I think my dad got out of trouble. I was telling you, I know he did. He told me the story. I
Mm.
just didn't believe him. I thought he was completely full of shit, because you have to understand my dad. He's like
Mhm.
George Carlin. Like,
Ah,
really.
okay.
And so he was this cynical, crusty, life did him wrong, type 1 diabetic. And I was like, I don't know. You shot somebody once, like, just because you were mad. You shot them in the shoulder. Like, I don't know if I buy this. And he's like, no, no. One time I got caught with all this drugs on me, and I was definitely going to go to prison. And they were like, if you come with us, and a 3-letter agency offered this to him, and do
Mhm.
these certain things, then maybe we'll let you go. And it had to do with like flying things out of certain places in coffins, funny enough. But the
Mhm.
thing is later I saw a documentary on this, and I was like, this is real? Like, I literally was like, this is not real. And then later he dies, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is real. Like, they did this whole expose on, how a bunch of illegal drugs got into the US during Vietnam War times, being shipped in the caskets of the veterans that
Mhm.
had passed away. And there's a whole expose about it. And I was like watching it going, I have heard this story before. I
It's
was
like a
like,
light bulb goes off. You're like, "Hmm."
oh, it was kind of freaky, because I always thought my dad was just utterly full of shit, because his stories were so like crazy. But now I have all these crazy stories, and I'm like, I get it. I get it. Yeah. So that's that.
It's
And yeah, about that time he got out of it the once, but like I said, he did get nailed later. And my stepdad just ramped up to a point where my mom finally was like, yeah, no more of this. And I ended up being a ward of the court, and that sucked, but
hmm.
I ended up living with my grandma. And so I went from this crazy chaos, and I'd always been a Mormon, but that's like a Jack Mormon. Like, you go with your neighbors or whatever,
Mhm.
people feel bad for you and take you to church. But like, I wasn't indoctrinated at that
Gotcha.
point. I was, but I wasn't, not like I became. So at 13, my grandma actually took me in, and I knew one thing. My dad wasn't a Mormon. He was in big trouble. My mom was a Jack Mormon. She seemed to be in a lot of trouble. My grandpa, who lived with my grandma, and she used to say, I had 4 kids, and your grandpa's the biggest one I ever raised, because they got married at 14 and 16. And he was in a biker gang. And he was a one
Interesting.
percenter. Yeah, it
Yeah,
was serious.
that's very
And
interesting.
yeah. all my uncles were sundowners and everything. And so like I saw all this chaos and I'm like, I think the safe person is grandma over here. I think we should go to church because she seems to have it together, you know. These other
I
people
get
not
you.
so
I get
good.
you.
Yeah.
I
So
totally understand. That's it's very interesting, the how you heard this experience from your father.
mhm.
And then just, down the road sometime you see
Random.
this documentary and you're like, holy crap, this is what he
I w-
was doing.
I
It's
wished he
like,
was alive. I wished he was alive when that happened because my jaw was literally, you could not have picked me up off the floor after that moment. I was like, holy crap. Like, because I just thought he was kidding or I don't know. I mean, it just sounded too unreal, you know, like it doesn't sound real. And so, but like I said, he didn't just get caught with the drugs. He shot somebody in the shoulder. Like he was going to go down for
mm,
attempted murder. And it was a big charge. And he's like, yeah, and this and blah, blah, blah. And then it made sense later because his brother was actually high up in the Air Force and was a pilot. And so this had to do with
mm,
planes. And I'm like, this makes a lot more sense when you're older, you know, and you put these
yeah.
things together and you're like, huh, weird. Okay. Um, and I did verify with one of my uncles was a Green Beret. He was in the special forces. He was presidential duty, the whole deal. He's like, there were deals. Yeah, you bet there were. And I was
Oh.
like, oh my gosh. Like, it's just weird. It's weird to know that he wasn't totally full of shit.
No, exactly. No, and I think that's interesting. It came full circle for you when you saw that documentary. Excuse me.
Mhm.
And it's funny. I'm wondering if they still do that. I'm wondering if these
Woo.
alphabet agencies, they catch somebody in there that's got somebody, high up somewhere, and they're like, all right, look, like, you want to
Would
come,
not surprise me.
you want
Would
to come
not
smuggle
surprise me.
heroin
Yes,
across the
because
Mexican border? Like,
I
we'll
mean,
get you off your charges.
what better guy to go undercover than a guy that really does do that? You know, I mean, he was already kind of in trouble for doing that very thing. So like he looked the part. He was kind of, I mean, he was obviously buying more drugs than just his own, or he wouldn't have been lined up for prison, right? Like it was a lot. And I mean, it would have put him away for a very long time. And
Mhm.
just later my son said, because my dad was really involved in their life later. He said, Papa would be so proud you came full circle. And that you're out and you're crusty and you don't believe anything now. And I'm like, yeah, I guess he would. That's
That's
kind of
that's
funny,
really
but
that's really cool. I like
yeah.
that. No, I like that. So one thing I want to dive into real quick. This is initially when you and I were chatting,
Mhm.
definitely caught my interest because I know, the occult and a lot of different esoteric
Yes.
philosophies is at a very core it's a core fundamental to a lot of what we know as the organized religions today.
Mhm. Yeah.
And we see these occult aspects, kind of showcase themselves in pretty much every religion. And one thing that you brought up to me that I found insanely fascinating, and I'm really looking forward to diving into this, was that
Yes.
Mormonism has a really huge occult background. Like this is
Yes.
cool.
And I'm going to go to a slideshow here in one second. I came across this. I want people to know. Here I am studying the Bible, praying to God, like I'll do anything. Like I'm desperate to like be put kind of back together, right? Like I'm very
Mhm.
sad at this point. And God's like, well, what about a podcast? And I was like, yeah, not that. I don't know what idea. Like I know three people. Like literally, I'm like, this isn't gonna work because I know three people. that and they probably don't like me. Like I don't know. Like it's not gonna go well. I just don't have that many friends. I'm not a networker. I'm just
Mhm.
like my own kind of person. And so I was like, this is no. Mm-mm. And so then the next thing was, and I put it in the back burner, was you need to study these books. And I'm
Mhm.
like, about the occult? Are you crazy? Like, I mean, like this kept just God's not literally talking to me. These are just thoughts in my mind that I'm like, why am I supposed to do this? I don't want to do this. This sounds scary. I don't want to do scary things. You know, I was very mainstream. You have to understand, like, I barely knew who Crowley was. I didn't know who John Dee was at all. And I got led to John D. And when I found out who he was, because I didn't know, I was like, no way, this is an occult book. Like, this is spooky. I don't, how do I want to sleep at night? Like this is scary to me. And so I was like, all right, I'm just gonna try and skim it and do my best. And then I ran across these things that I'm gonna show you. So I'm gonna share screen here. And
Awesome.
this will make more sense because a picture is worth 1,000 words. And when I put this together originally, I did so because I kept trying to explain it to people and it wasn't going that great. It was like, okay, yeah, we get it. Okay, let's see. I'm pushing share, but it doesn't want to. And it was just like, no, people didn't get it. They're like, no, I've heard about the Mormons. They're fine. They're nice people. What do you mean? There we go. And I'm
Perfect.
going to find it really quick first. And so I was
No
like,
worries.
well, I don't know if you know this about Mormons, and this is what where it started really making sense for people. So let me know what you can you see this?
Yes, we can. We got it up right
Okay,
now.
perfect. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about this. This is Joseph Smith's mother's handwriting, and this is actually provided by the Church History Library in Salt Lake City, Utah, which is
Mhm.
the actual mainstream Mormon churches. It's theirs. They've got this out for people to see. And the thing about having something out for people to see is it's really hard to say someone's full of crap if you have receipts. So that's exactly what I
Mhm.
decided I was going to do as a presenter of this because it sounds insane. So this is the first thing I found. And I was like, what does this mean? His mom was writing a letter to one of her friends in the family. And she's basically saying, we're not lazy. This isn't what we do all day. And I'm going to read the part. It says, let not my reader suppose that because I shall pursue another topic for a season, that we stopped our labors and win it trying to win the faculty of a brack, drawing magic circles or soothsaying to the neglect of all kinds of business. Oh, okay. So she's saying, yeah, we do
Hmm.
all that all the time, but we're not only doing that. I mean, we work. So the
100%.
house of a brack is a funny little word, and I did not know what it meant, but I had some sort of idea because I've heard
Ooh.
the word abracadabra before, right? And so I'm like,
Ooh.
okay, what does this mean? So obviously, the house of a brack is a Abraxas. It is noted. If you look it up, put in house of a brack, it's going to come
I'm
up for
looking
you.
at the symbolism in that right now, and it's screaming a certain something to me. But I'll tell you what I think
We'll
after
get
you're
there.
done for sure. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, yeah.
And so I was like, well, what the heck is his mom talking about this for? Right. So you have to know a tiny bit of the backstory of the Mormon church. And this is the mainstream version that they like to pick. But also, this was happening 4 different times in 4 different ways. But this is the one they chose. So Joseph Smith had an angel visit him after he had had a blackout in a grove because he went to pray and say, what church should I join? Because there's a Bible verse that says, let you ask of God if you don't know about something. Okay, so he has a fit
Mhm.
of darkness. This should sound familiar if any of your readers or listeners are familiar with Muhammad. And he
Mhm.
woke up and he saw God the Father and the Son standing there. And then he was like, that's weird, and talked to them, and they told him all kinds of things. And then an angel pops up and he tells him about these golden plates that he has. And they're in a hill in his backyard because he's got a bum leg. We can't be running off all over. Um, and this is Moroni. This is the angel he spoke to. And it's on the top of most of all
Mm.
the temples. Okay. And so this is the vision I told you about. This is literally from the church. This is what they put up on the walls everywhere. This is God the Father and the Son, separate entities, by the way, for the church. They believe not in the Trinity. They believe in 3 separate beings. And they also believe in Adam God theory, which is God was once as Adam was, and Adam can become God. So
That's very
just
interesting.
yeah. Just so you know, also Joseph Smith saw 26 different apparitions, angels, and or dead people, which aren't supposed to pop up right after they're dead. Um, well, that would be necromancy if we start talking to dead people. So,
Absolutely.
yeah, long story short, he's talking to all kinds of people. But also, his mother is first generation American born, but she was Scottish. And that is critical. If you know anything about Freemasonry and all the things that go with that, Mormonism
Mm-hmm.
ties, it plays highly into things. So, one story before we get to this little hat picture here is Joseph, when he was little, he got typhoid fever. And they like to play off that these people are dumb farmers and they live out in the middle of nowhere and he could barely write a letter. He can't even do these things that people say he did. This was definitely an angel, okay, because he's a dumb farmer. Okay. Well, his brother went to Dartmouth. Okay. His brother, let me tell you his name of his brother, just in case you were wondering about Freemasonry. His brother's name is
Mm-hmm.
Hiram. His brother's name is Hiram. Like Hiram Abiff.
Interesting.
Yeah. Fun
Very
times.
interesting.
Um,
Yeah.
so he
That's
was,
beyond coincidence in my opinion. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, it's a lot. And then on top of it, we've got Joseph, who at his birth was born in a call, which his dad ran around the whole town saying, my son's going to be a seer because he was born in a call, which means in the amniotic sac, which it's
Mhm.
rare even today. It's super rare. So this kid's kind of been labeled a seer since he was literally out of the womb. Okay. And his mom has been known as a healer. And when he got sick, they were going to cut his leg off because he got such a horrible infection in his leg that was the only thing they really could do. It was in the bone. He had osteomyelitis, I'm assuming.
Mhm.
But the one thing these dumb farmers could do is call doctors from Harvard to come. That sounds weird. Okay. And they
Okay.
made a house call. Yeah. So I'm like, oh, okay. They just came on down and she said, please don't cut off his leg because I'm a healer and I know some things, which she actually must have because I'll give her props. She had them cut out the infection and this had to happen again and again. And he had this gaping wound for some time. So
Wow.
he walked with a limp the rest of his life. He obviously did heal. But if you're a kid and you've got a bum leg, you can't go out and work in the field. So you're going to hang out with mom. And mom's
Mhm.
this Scottish healer. And not only that, but also, what are you going to bring home for your little brother that's got a bum leg if you're going to Dartmouth and he's bored? Remember, they're not rich. And back in the
Mhm.
day, books were like a big deal. So, books, right? Like, I am assuming he was very well read. And when people try to say he was a dumb farmer, it just gets under my skin because if you know anything about JFK, he was extremely sick when he was young and he became an
Mhm.
avid reader and extremely brilliant because he was in bed all the time. So, I'm assuming good old Joe had the same thing occur to him. So,
I mean, that makes sense. Yeah.
this is the only thing I can think of that really, I'm going down the trajectory road of like what I've been told plus like common sense. So we get to this point in his life and this is something that we were not taught. This is why this is in here. This right here is a
Wow.
rendition of what I'm going to describe to you. And there's a treasure bag hanging on his neck. And that isn't a treasure bag to put treasure in. That is to hold his seer stone, which by the way, he
Okay.
had a dark and a light one. Anyways,
That's
whatever.
interesting. Whoa.
Yeah,
So he had
I'll
both the
show
dark
you.
and yeah, okay, okay. Yeah, yeah,
And he had a magical hat. And what do you say when you pull magic out of a hat? You say abracadabra
yeah.
or
Exactly.
abrahadabra, if you want to say it correctly. So kind of funny that they say these people don't believe in magic and we're talking to dead people and then we've got secret stones and whatever. He stole it, by the way. um he stole it from
It
his
sounds like
neighbor.
they were doing mental gymnastics to make themselves believe they were not doing magic because
Yeah,
this is exactly what it sounds like.
it's definitely magic. And I think what it was you have to think of the time period is this is when shortly after his mother would have been born in America, would have been right before that King James is killing all the people that were witches. So I highly likely think they may have learned their lesson and not done that anymore, like on the DL only,
On the DL. Yeah, yeah,
yeah, we can't be magicking out in front of everybody. But they were really known as treasure diggers, and they were really known to use these seer stones to help people. And so it wasn't a big surprise to me about that. But the hat, right? Remember this
yeah.
picture I showed you? We'll go one back. This was not how I was told the Book of Mormon came about. I was told that this, I'll show you, was the way. Hold on. Oh, it's not there. Okay. that he basically translated it out of like the plates were sitting on his desk and he's just studiously writing. No hat, no rock, none of this crap. Okay. And all of a sudden, the internet happened. Fantastic, right? So good, because for a while the church was like, this is real. I'm going to tell you a real slogan from the LDS church. Doubt your doubts. Don't doubt your faith. Don't get on the internet and try and prove things incorrectly right. Like, you may be lost down a weird place and then you'll learn things you shouldn't know and come to church and want to leave. Okay. So basically they did that for a little while. They were like, everything is anti-Mormon propaganda. Don't read anti-Mormon propaganda. Don't read this and don't read that. Yeah.
It sounds very familiar. Yeah, I'm not, I'm obviously I'm not trying to make this as a complete comparison, but it's like North Korea. It's like anything outside of North Korea is propaganda. Okay. Like, you don't look at, yeah. So.
And so, I mean, we didn't know any of this hat business. You have to understand, when this next picture happened, as a 48-year-old, even ex-Mo, we call us ex-Mos, ex-Mormon. I about died when I saw this in the paper. Okay. This is the actual hat. And this is the current prophet, seer, and revelator of the LDS mainstream Mormon church. They ripped this sucker out of the vault and nobody has seen this and went, ta-da, he's going to put it on. And we all went, is this real? Like South Park said, is this freaking real? Like, what? We were shook, because when South Park came out, we were like, that's a bunch of crap and lies. Who would ever believe this came from a magical rock? Get real. And now we're at revelation of the method, and here it is, and whatever. And I just was shocked. So the current generation knows a fully different story than what we learned growing up. When we grew up, there was no masonry. We didn't have we weren't Masons. What are you talking about? Don't talk about that. There was no hat. There was a rock, but it wasn't like critical. There were plates, and he was studious, and he was translating them, and so it was a shock. And by the way, fun fact, this is Russell M. Nelson, and he is the current prophet of the church. As I said, prophet, seer, and revelator is his title. He is also an Allen Key member of the Skull and Bones Charter of University of Utah, which is not exactly.
Well, would you look at that?
It's fantastic. I love it so much because, again, remember what I said about having receipts, and I've got to add it to this presentation, but it's from his own hand in his biography on page 43 of his biography that costs $1,200 now. So,
whoa, that's a really expensive book.
Yeah, it didn't used to be that expensive, but now they don't want you to know that. And so Allen Key is like Scroll and Key. It's just a branch off. And Skull and Bones Charter at University of Utah was started by Skull and Bones members from Yale University, and they came to Utah and started it. Like, they used everything the same. So it is not some rinky-dink baloney. This was started by chartered members. And so if you know anything about Skull and Bones, I have a show coming out soon about that, but you probably don't want your prophet in Skull and Bones.
No, 100%. And I'm looking at, so the one thing I noticed is, especially in this photo, he's kind of putting off a little bit of that checkerboard symbolism with that red tie and that white shirt. That's definitely the first thing I noticed. So yeah, he's definitely, this is awesome. I had no idea about all of this.
It gets really better. Let's keep going. Yeah. So this is his dark rock, and this is his brown seer stone, which, by the way, this excerpt is from like the history museum thing, Church Museum of History and Art. So this is their proof, not mine, not Heidi's idea. It was his brown seer stone, which he used translating the Book of Mormon. His wife, Emma, is believed to have made the leather pouch for its safekeeping. So there's that. And right here, I said, and this is documented because amazing and so much fun, is he got in trouble and he got cited with a ticket and had to have a whole court thing for being a bad treasure digger because he sucked at it. And when that happened, affidavits happened. So fun fact, this isn't just hearsay. This was from an affidavit that Willard Chase, his neighbor, said that he took this from him because he wanted it back and they were digging on his property. So technically his rock. and he would not give it back.
Oh my goodness! So he stole the rock.
He stole the rock, and he had this one. This is his white one. This is his sandy colored seer stone. It's very light in color. It's like a beigey white. A dark one and a light one.
I know that's the symbolism behind that is just blowing my mind. Like it's just
I wish I could see your face while I tell you this, but I can't. But guess what? Guess what? The older Mormons call each other, like fundamentalist Mormons that stay true to real Mormonism. Guess what they call each other?
Let me hear it. I want to hear this.
Broyer.
What?
I can't make it up. I can't make it up. It's amazing. It's so much fun with the magical world. It's hysterical. If anybody knows anything, that's kind of a magical terminology for brother. By the way,
great term. It's like a combination between Proto-Indo-European and Latin almost. It's a very yeah.
And they say the sister one too, but I can't quite pronounce that one as good. But it's similar, like not Sawyer, but something like that. And so, anyways, I seen that and I about fell off my chair when I was studying about the Golden Dawn. And I saw it and I went, "Are you serious right now?" Like,
oh wow,
okay,
that was definitely a full circle moment for you at that point. You were like, "Oh, I can't deny this anymore." Holy shit!
Yeah, it was crazy. And this is the picture I was looking for. How we learned that he really translated the book with, by the way, a Urim and Thummim. Like,
Ooh, this
Jewish
is
mysticism.
This is starting to
Whatever.
get really interesting. Yeah.
And so he had a breastplate of righteousness, and they were given to him directly by an angel. Don't you worry, he took them back. You can't see them. And these magical spectacles. And they were the Urim and Thummim, and look what they made.
Oh wow.
What? And so this is a picture of his rendition of what it looked like, right?
Oh my God, he's got the compass and the square on there too. Like this is out in the open.
This is juicy. This gets really good. And so remember, I'm just a normal mom. Like I don't really want to know about all this occult stuff, nor did I know at this time. I'm just learning about all this weird stuff, and then I'll show you the critical thing that opened my mind. I hadn't yet known about the Golden Dawn thing either. So just so you know, this is his ticket for glass looking. This is real. He got a fee, and it was like a fine. And you have to understand that this wasn't unheard of. Like water witching and like looking for wells and all this weird stuff was kind of normal back then. So that means he sucked so bad that somebody literally said, "I'm taking you to court." It's like jaywalking. like we all know it's illegal, but like nobody's getting a ticket, right? Unless you really are up to no good. I mean, I just don't know. So they literally took him to court, which is so good because there's so many affidavits that lead into the crazy here in a while. So this little piece is also critical. And I know I'm jumping around. I promise I'll bring it all together. But there's no good way to put like all of this weird stuff in just a direct line because there's a lot of weird stuff. And I even had to like whittle it down to the smallest presentation or we'd be here all day.
I totally understand. No, keep going. This is profoundly fascinating. I'm like I'm learning so much at this point. I'm like in it.
So this one, let's see, was a real actual, they ran this 6 times in the paper. You can see Palmyra, September 25th, 1824. And I want to tell you a little story about the angel. So remember, Joseph Smith saw the angel and the angel said he'd give him the plates, but it didn't happen that easy. Okay. So the angel was like, and if you've read anything about John Dee's angels, this is hysterical because they're always messing with people. It's never easy, right? They're like stabbing them with swords that come out of books. And they're like, "Hey, Edward Kelly, go get a wife. Why are you married? What are you doing? Who told you to get married? Blah, blah, blah." Like they're just really crazy all the time. And so this makes sense, if you know anything about that. So they basically are saying, you need to bring your brother with you to get these plates. Okay. I'll give him to you next year. You got to bring Alvin because Alvin's the guy. He's the firstborn son. And I want you to bring him. All right. Mm-hmm. He says, "I will." Okay, cool. He's only been trying to get these plates for 4 years. By the way, once he got punched in the face by a toad, not a salamander. We will get into that in a bit.
Okay. That I'm curious about.
put that in your back pocket because it's very interesting. And as you well know, toads are a very occultic little friend. So they use them. Why do you think they're in Harry Potter and stuff? Like they're a part of things that they use. Okay. Not a frog, a toad. So basically the brother dies. He's poisoned right after the angels are like, you have to come with next year. So Joseph doesn't know what to do. And then all of these rumors start going around the town saying that they were messing with his grave. Okay. So the dad gets this great idea. This was ran by his dad and he ran it 6 times. And I'm going to summarize it. It's basically saying, hey, if you saw us digging up my son, we did, because we're checking on him because you guys said we dug him up and we wanted to prove that we didn't dig him up. So we dug him up.
Okay. All right. Double negative. Okay.
Yeah,
we'll roll with that.
Yeah. Super crazy. And they're basically saying because people were gossiping, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. And we're just doing this to show you. So this is pre-gaming of a 2-year-old. This is like, if you basically saw us messing with that grave, we had a reason to be there. So don't come at us. Okay. And so everybody makes a joke that's been involved with kind of the exploration of the Mormon church and member Skull and Bones. And everybody jokes and says that Alvin had a hand in Mormonism. Probably the right one. No proof.
I caught that. There you go.
No proof. This is the magic circle that was spoke about in that letter. And also this is a rendition from Willard Chase, the neighbor. This is actually his words onto paper. And this was from an affidavit. Okay. Now in the church, they tell us, oh, Joseph, he got the angel and the angel told him, and then there was a light and it was beautiful. And he gave him the books and their golden plates, whatever. Oh, and it's like this really angelic story. Okay. Well, there's a different story documented in court documents in an affidavit by the Willard Chase family stating, which is their closest neighbor, stating that Joseph had to borrow a black horse on the fall equinox in the middle of the night to go with his bride Emma to get the plates dressed all in black. Doesn't sound sketchy at all.
Not at all. Sounds like a completely normal evening.
Yeah, totally normal. And that he had to go to this angel like that, all in black, and with his new bride, and she waited in the cart. Okay, so remember that part, and then remember this. This is literally the symbols that they said happened, and then a goat's neck got slit, their blackest goat, and they bled it all around the circle. And this freaked the neighbor out. Yeah, not weird. Not weird at all, because when we get into this, it will all make sense, right? So the Smith magical relics are one of my most favorite things. The rocks are owned by the church. However, the parchments and the knife are owned by a private seller that won't sell. Ha!
Ooh, I wonder who that private seller is. That's an interesting question.
Nobody's ever going to know because they would unalive him for sure. Him or her. This stuff is kept in vaults. They have big, huge vaults, just like the Vatican. There's a whole underground tunnel system. This is like real. I'm not making this up. You can look it up. It's underneath Salt Lake City. So anyways, this stuff came out, and this is what led me to John D. Remember that little magical bag he had around his neck? Remember that picture?
Mm-hmm.
This is what's in it. And when people see this, you will have no doubts of where its origin is. Let me blow it up for you.
Ooh.
You like it?
Yeah. I see the this is wow, man. So this is really kind of like blowing a hole open on this, because you know, when you see the face of Mormonism and you see the face of the Church of Latter-day Saints and things like that,
they innocent.
Yeah, they most definitely do I have to give credit where credit's due. They've been doing a fantastic job at not letting this come to light.
So good. Because you have to remember, I'm a normie lady and I did not know what any of this meant. Look at this circle. Look familiar.
Man, and that sigil. Yes. All of these sigils look insanely familiar.
Yes.
100%.
And this right here is what led me to John D, because this is a special angel. It's a calling down for a specific angel that's not very common. And when I put it in the reverse lookup, it came up with one thing, John D. Of all the internet, one guy it links to. And I'm like, well, who the hell's that? Like, what is this guy? He's an old dude. Like, what does he have to do with anything, right? Well, little did I know. This is called the Holiness to the Lord parchment. This is the original copy. It's in horrible shape. It's all folded up and crinkled and like degrading, and it's the only picture known. So it's like very messed up. But here is a better in color deciphering, basically, by somebody
Wow,
that put a lot of time.
we've got
Oh,
alchemical
it's
symbols,
yeah.
we've got Hebrew, we've got a lot of stuff that looks like it's straight out of Solomon's seal as well,
It
dude. This
it
is
is.
like,
It is. It's
oh
out
my
of these books at the bottom. They're noted, and The Magus by Francis Barrett, The
I'm gonna have to
Discovery of Witchcraft by Reginald Scott, Occult Sciences by Ebenezer Sibley, and Sloan MS 3824 Liber Officium Spiritum.
Well, my
So,
goodness, dude, this is like, I mean, this really, like we were talking about, like, I mean, for anybody who knows these symbols, like,
mhm.
and they're just, kind of maybe getting into, maybe researching Mormonism and just taking a look at it. If they come across the symbols, like, especially me, I'd be like, whoa, now, what do
Yeah.
we have going on here?
What's happening here? And they would never know this, because I'm telling you this, I've never known one Mormon or ex-Mormon that I've showed this to that knew these existed ever. So I don't know
Whoa.
why some dumb mom in Utah, not that I'm not dumb, but I don't know
No.
why some lady in Utah that's just spent her life in the medical field can figure all this out and do a whole lot of research and go, well, wait a minute. What? Why is
Dude,
nobody else talking about this, right? Like, this is serious. I mean, I don't care if, listen, this is my opinion on everything in the world. If you want to be a Satanist, if you want to be a Mason, if you want to be a Mormon, if you want to be a Catholic, if you want to be, I don't care what you want to be, but you can't lie to people, because you piss off women and women get mad and then they come for you with a podcast. So
what is it, the
this is
saying that hell hath no fury like a woman's scorn?
It's truth. It's truth, because if you go and pledge a Mason hall, you go to the lodge and you're going to be a Mason. You're probably going to be lied to a little bit, but at the end, you still know what you're going to be. You're going to be a Mason. I
Mhm.
went to church and was told I had to learn a whole bunch of stuff to go to heaven, and I had no idea what I was doing. I had no idea about the Masonic rituals I will show you here soon. I had
Okay.
no idea about the occult origins, and I just don't think that's fair. Okay? That's
I would
that's
agree
a
with that.
generational curse upon my family, and I don't appreciate it. So
It's
I
that's
think if
that's
the
how they do
yeah,
it. That's how they do it. They
yeah.
get you to think you're doing something else and that you're
Mhm.
doing this for a good reason or for a good purpose, but in reality, they're taking your free will and they're
Yes.
using it against you.
And I think that they are channeling things into people, to be quite frank, and we will get there. But I'm telling you, this is bullshit of the highest order, because most Mormons do not know that this exists. I will say there is a small percentage of Reddit people, and like I'm talking so small of people that kind of know what's up, but it's not usually Mormons. They get lied to time and time again, and they never get the full knowledge of what's happening. So I just don't think that's right. Like, if the church came out tomorrow and said, "You know what? This is what's up. This is how it is." I probably would back off. It's
Yeah.
just wrong. It's wrong to trick people. I just think that I'm a very weird person about, like, justice, and especially for the small person, right?
I'm with you on
And I
that
just
100%.
yeah. Yeah, I don't like it. And so this pissed me off, and let alone the masonry. This is now past masonry. Everybody kind of knows, there's always whispers about masonry, but like also they always kind of poo-pooed them before. Now they don't. But this is different. This isn't masonry. This is occultism. So I don't know that that's fair if you don't know that you're becoming an alchemist slash occultist. Like, let's be
No,
real.
no, especially it's one thing if you're willingly if you decide to willingly participate on that path, but
Yes.
to have your free will used against you like that, I mean, it sucks because by
Deluge.
technicality, it's not an infringement on the free will principle because they told you a lie with a little bit of truth and you accepted it. So that's where they get you, and it's really messed up.
Yes. And I felt like it's just It's all over the temple too, and I'll show you. But these kind of things are protection sigils. This is a different one. This is the Jehovah parchment. The other one is the holiness to the Lord. And the third one is my favorite because it's straight up the Baphomet's head. I swear to you. Look. Oh, sorry.
I just saw that, and yeah, that's a very okay. No. Oh wow, yes, indeed. You have either a bull or a ram symbol there for sure, 100%.
And so these are all parchments belonging to, now this is how the church gets out of this. Joseph Smith, Sr. and Jr., but were inherited by Hiram's family because they died together in the same area. Okay. They died together. Their brothers died together. So here's the thing. They split up all the belongings, but remember what I told you about Hiram. Hiram wasn't the treasure digger. Hiram didn't have anything to do with none of that. He was off at school, being studious, doing his studies. Okay. He really wasn't into the treasure digging. However, his dad and his brother were. There's documented evidence that I've showed you that he had a ticket for treasure digging. Who likely owned the parchments? Like, let's get real. That's silly. Like they're blaming it on him. So there was, it's the brothers. But this was also in there. So not to be undone, I do want to know where the cup is, but whatever. Anyway, this copy is a photo of the actual sigil knife dagger with the seal of Mars and also Adonai, Scorpio, and intelligence of Mars on the other side. This is a ceremonial knife. This is not he's not cutting apples. Okay.
That looks like a ceremonial dagger for sure. 100%. Yes.
And it even says, including a dagger inscribed with occult and religious symbols, especially with Adonai on it. I'm sorry. Like there's multiple things on there that are also like zodiac, like I said, the intelligence of Mars, whatever. But it's saying definitely was owned by the Smith family. They tried to put it off on Hiram, but let's not forget for 1 minute who was the magical people in the family. It wasn't the dumb brother. It just wasn't. Not that he was dumb.
Okay. If you don't mind me saying, that dagger looks like a prequel to Crowley's dagger.
Oh, it does.
It almost looks the exact same. Like that's so bizarre.
And speaking of that, well, as you well know, like you have to have certain other instruments for ceremonial magic. That's why I joke and say I want to know where his cup is, because there's certain things that people have with this stuff. And I'll tell you, I've talked to ex-OTO members, shout out New York Patriot, who've told me other similarities when we get to the outfits that we were in the temple. So he definitely was messing around with things. There's no doubt for me. Absolutely none.
I wonder if he had an obsidian mirror stashed away somewhere too at this point. Because
mirrors come into this, but remember, he didn't need a mirror because Nostradamus used water and then blocked out all the light. He used his hat and put the seer stone in. So still a stone, but it wasn't obsidian. Yeah. So that is how he says he actually channeled the Book of Mormon. He says he put the stone in the hat and blocked out all the light. And he was the Edward Kelly himself and called out symbols, not words, to his scribes. I'm going to show you them and you're going to die because I did. It was fun. It was a fun time. Okay. And then I knew why I had to read John Dee because it made complete sense after that. This is also owned by Joseph Smith. He did not die with his magical underwear on, but he did die with his Jupiter talisman on.
Wow.
Yes. So this is actually verified. They can't say this was owned by someone else because his wife wanted it back. And she said, that's my husband's and he always wore it and I want it back. So she identified it as her husband's and retrieved the property. So this was worn by him always. It's obviously a magical item. Talismans are used to, this particular symbols are used to have influence over others, become rich and powerful, and find peace. The inscription on the talisman comes direct from the Magus, which they said he never read. So that's fun.
I was going to say he never read it, but he somehow knew it. It's like, it's funny because I remember, what was it? Tim Pool was saying one time when Fauci was, in court saying he didn't do gain of function, but he did some kind of function of gain. And Tim Pool was like, I didn't stab him. He just fell on my knife like 10 times. I don't know what happened. That's basically what this is the equivalent of.
And it's funny to me because they're like, oh no, he couldn't possibly have known that. And I'm like, well, then what the hell is this? It's not
That's
like they had a corner shop that he could go buy this. Plus,
you would
even
only
nowadays,
use that.
you can't.
Yeah.
You can't buy a talisman. You have to have it either manufactured or made for you specifically for you. Like it's not a generic item. You would never have a generic talisman. Let's get real. Unless it's like maybe an Abraxas ring. I don't
I mean, you
know.
only
But
use this stuff if you know what it is. I mean, you don't just, especially with things like this. I mean, you don't just haphazardly you have to know what it is if you're going to use something like this. So that's why I think
exactly.
that's pretty funny.
So specific, right? And they say that you could go into a room with Joseph, and no matter how mad you were at him, when you left the room, you were no longer mad at him. And that's funny because that's kind of what this is for. Obviously, it didn't work at the end because they killed him. But
Yeah.
I think there's a reason for that, and I'll tell you. And I don't think it's the one we were told. This
Oh,
little
wow.
parchment on the bottom, okay? The top is the Enochian alphabet, but the bottom is actually called the Anton papers, okay? And you can look this up, everyone. Everything that I present is actually either from the church itself or verified documents. So this is a verified document that they tried to get this authorized by this guy last name Anton, and they thought these were Egyptian hieroglyphs that they were writing in. So they took it to this guy and they were like, hey, Mr. Linguist guy, can you verify this and put your stamp on it that this is a legit thing? And he said, sure, but where'd you get it? And they said, what do you mean? We wrote it. He said, yeah, but where'd you get the characters on it? And then they were like, well, from the hat.
I noticed that right off. I noticed that right off the rip that it was Enochian. That's why I was like, I was like, this is crazy.
Yes, it is definitely not what we were told for sure. I think it is a little bit of a variant in some ways, and maybe he put his little spin on it. But if you look at some of those, I mean, they're very similar. So, especially look at the one, here. Let's see. This is almost.
Yeah, I'm taking a look. I'm comparing the two as we're like looking at it. And yeah, it's almost as if he added almost his little bit of a spin on it, but it's very, very, very similar.
So this is the characters. And like I said, he was very obsessed with Egyptian stuff. And he was really he thought this was like Egyptian hieroglyphics, which we absolutely know it's not, because it was the language. For those that don't know, Enochian alphabet was given to John Dee by the angels. So do I think they were angels? Yes. Do I think they were fallen angels? Yes. So I mean, it is what it is, but regular angels don't ask you to sleep with somebody else's wife. That's where the cutoff was for me. So
that's a little.
So this is going to be loud. So let me turn this down because when I recorded it, it was super loud. This is a tiny
I'm already looking at that doorway and I'm like,
this is real. This is from the actual temple. And I know because I've been there and I did all these temple rites that we're going to get into right now. So this is a tiny little reenactment. This is not from the church. This is a reenactment, but I can tell you this is what they do because I did it. So here we go. We're going to.
What you are seeing is an authentic first time ever on.
Can you hear it okay?
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm just going to mute my mic. Yeah.
Secret Mormon temple ceremonies that even most Mormons have never seen. And those who have sworn never to reveal these secrets under penalty of death.
The execution of the penalty is represented by placing the right thumb under the left ear, drawing the thumb quickly across the throat to the right ear, and dropping the hand to the side.
All of us who've been through the temple have sworn solemn oaths consenting to having our throat slit and our heart and our vitals torn out.
The execution of the penalty is represented by drawing the thumb quickly across the body and dropping the hands to the side.
In the Mormon temple marriage, the partners are sealed to each other for time and all eternity in Mason-like rituals. And without this ceremony, no one can enter the presence of Joseph Smith and become a god.
Pay, lay, ale. Brother Pratt, having authority, I wash you preparatory to receiving your anointings for and in behalf of John Kimball, who is dead, that you may become clean from the blood and sins of this generation.
Sister Bradford, I wash you preparatory to you receiving your anointings for and behalf of
Eliza Barrett,
Eliza Barrett, who is dead, that you may become clean from the blood and sins of this generation.
I wash your head, that your brain and intellect may become clear and active.
Your eyes, that you may see clearly and discern between truth and error.
Thousands of occultic ceremonies each day are performed for the dead, so that they too can receive the benefits of Mormonism. Mormons are encouraged to have encounters with the dead, and it's not uncommon for demons impersonating the dead to appear to Mormons stating that they've been converted to the Mormon church in the spirit world and now want their family history traced.
Your loins, that you may be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth, that you may have joy in your posterity.
Your vitals and bowels, that they may be strong and healthy and perform their proper function.
Your breast, that it may be the receptacle of pure and virtuous principles.
Okay, that's fun.
Whoa, dude. Whoa. Whoa, this is what's going on. Like, holy shit. Like,
Yes, they have changed a few things since I went through and since that movie. They got rid of the slicing your throat one and slicing your belly because I believe it was because of a famous murder that happened with blood atonement called the Lafferty murders. Right around the time they got rid of it, somebody went a little off the deep end and decided that they were going to start doing blood atonement because they read some of Joseph Smith's original writings called The School of Prophets. And they actually did kill their brother's wife because she wouldn't obey him and slit her throat, including her little 18-month-old babies. So
oh my God, dude.
that happened in 1980, and this was taken out of the temple ceremony within 9 months later. So I think it was a PR move. What they do to cover the PR move, because remember, this is supposed to be directly from God, so we're not supposed to change it. Which, remember, the fundamentalist Mormons do not change anything; they do the original everything. The mainstream Mormons, their prophet prays a lot for things that are acceptable and good for this generation. And they go, oh, yep, I had a premonition. We should let Black people in and stuff like that. So that's what they do because it's looked down upon. And they've also changed a lot of that ceremony that I showed you. So I'm going to go over it. It comes up again here in a second. This is many of our first exposure to the temple as kids. We go and do something called the baptisms for the dead. You're a morally clean 12 to 16-year-old kid, and you can go get baptized by proxy for dead people. And this is why genealogy, remember when I told you it's super important to the Mormons because they track everyone, and they have baptized not only Hitler, Marilyn Monroe, Elvis, all the fun people, but also the Jews that died for what they believed in. Oh, and continuing with Anne Frank. So eventually the Jewish people went, yeah, you can stop that now. And then they kind of had a little tough over it. And then they did it again. And so they don't really care. They will do names without your permission. They will do names that they get a hold of in general, and they don't really care.
Now that is an infringement on free will. That is,
Yes.
And at least in my eyes, something is going to come of that. I do think so.
They get around this by saying, well, we just did it and you can choose to accept it or not in heaven. So they say. So that's their answer because they always have an answer. After seeing this, and the oxen are usually golden. On this particular temple, they're white, but usually not. Usually they're golden. And it super reminded me after I got more knowledgeable of, okay, we're taking 12 to 15-year-old kids that are morally pure, putting them into the belly of a beast and like putting dead people on them. Like, okay, that doesn't sound like Moloch at all. I don't know, but
that's Moloch hardcore is what that is. That's just you're blowing my mind with this because I absolutely had no clue. I am like learning so much right now. I am like
it's not normal. Like no one would know this. If you went and talked, they would know about the baptism for the dead, but they would just say, oh, we're just doing that so they can have that if they need it. But they make it sound really like, oh, it's totally fine. And then for kids, they really don't understand it because they're like, oh, yay, we're going to go to the temple and then we get ice cream with the boys. Okay, cool. And also, fun fact, these are pubescent and prepubescent kids. Not only myself, I felt very awkward because I was overly developed, but my husband said he was underly developed developed because he was short and waited to grow for a while. And he said, I was just super uncomfortable because the little jumpsuits are white and you can't see out in the audience. You can't see who's out there. And you don't know if they're filming this. Like, I don't know,
That's a little weird. Yeah,
Mhm.
that's definitely weird.
And your parents have to sign a permission slip. So they're getting around that all kinds of ways. So that's the beginning of the temple. That's the very beginning is the kids go and do these baptisms. But that other ceremony I just showed you is called the endowment session. These aprons are dark green. This just is a weird coloring on it. They're not black. And if you'll notice the one-breasted robe,
Yes, I'm looking
we
at that
wear,
right now.
yeah, we wear clothes underneath of them, but yeah, we wear that. It's like the OTO. We also wear these garments after you go through the temple for the very first time. You get a new name. You get the ritual that where they were touching underneath their little poncho. You're naked, but I guess they changed that because people didn't like that. So now they wear a jumpsuit, which like I've said, remember the true fundamentalist Mormons that practice it the real way don't change anything, but the mainstream Mormons do, including the underwear. This is an example of the original underwear, which the fundamentalists still wear. This is like the more updated one-piece version with the butt flap. And then this is the new and improved. It looks like a t-shirt and long pants, including for women. There is a compass in the square, and then you have a Masonic ruler sideways over the umbilicus, and on the knee, right knee, every knee shall bow. You have to put these on right arm first, right leg first. You can't put them on the floor. There's all kinds of rules, and you can only buy them through the church if you're worthy with your temple card, and it's a whole process. My thing is the channeling thing. And once I show you more about the temple, I always wondered, these are over orifices, and we really don't know if anything is sewed to the internal growing area. It always made me wonder after I started learning what I'm learning now. I find it interesting that they're over openings in the body, like the umbilicus and nipples are both openings.
And it's the square and the compass. I mean, I think that is it's as plain as day. There's no denying it when you're seeing it in this kind of light. And I think
there it is, right? They're real. That's like real. That's somebody's real garments. I know because I wore them forever and they suck. They're super hot. It's really uncomfortable. They do have 2 other versions for males that are black for police officers and green for army people because they don't really want them questioned. They don't want it to be sticking out, and you can take them off to go swimming, to take a shower, to make more Mormons, to like very minimal things. That's the main ones that I can think of right now, but they must immediately go back on afterward, immediately. And you wear your bra over the top. They must be touching your skin at all times. And you must never take them off. Like you wear lots of new pairs. They're like your underwear, but like you wouldn't just take them off for fun to wear a cute outfit, right? Like none of that. They're quite long for the women.
That's like, I mean, too, especially if you're looking at, because I'm looking at the one in the bottom right-hand corner and how, visibly see-through, even just from what we're looking at right there it is. And you have these young children walking around the church. Man, that's just...
No. Yeah. The kids don't wear these. They
wear... They don't? Okay, good,
no.
I was like,
these are underwear. These are your underwear. These are magical underwear, basically. People make fun of these and say they're magic underwear. But the kids wear like a baptism suit, like a zip-up baptism. But they are sort of still see-through. They're white, and so you get those, you learn these are the Masonic handshakes. And I put this in here because, well, they're also our handshakes, but we only get 3 of the 5. And for example, the real grip of a master mason or the lion's paw, Joseph changed it and called it the true sign of the nail, like Jesus. So he just changed it. Joseph made the temple rite ceremony 6 weeks after he went through and got his Masonic ceremony. So there's no doubt to me that he completely ripped this off from them. If you ask any Mormons about Masonry, and multiple presidents of the church have said that Mormons have the true form of Masonry and that the Masons are misled. So they do not deny that they use it. Want to see something fun? This is the old church president before he died and the president of the United States.
It's George W.
George Jr. right there, baby George. They are doing the sign that I just spoke about, true sign of the nail or the lion's paw. That's not an accident. You don't just slip down somebody's cufflink. Like, come on, that's real. So for George, it would have been fine. But for the president, Thomas S. Monson, that would not be okay to do in public, because that is never to be done outside of a temple. So the fact that he did that is very interesting, because you're not supposed to. Here is the current president of the church. Very interesting. He's trying to hold the key. I see a little something different. I see one of those symbols, handshakes that I just showed you.
Yep,
I know that because I've done it. And you're never supposed to do this. I'm not really sure why he chose to do that and flash it, but I found it very interesting. So this again is our outfits. Let me zoom in. This is the current outfits. The women no longer have to veil their faces. They used to have to veil their, oh, we went really far. Touchscreen is a pain that way.
I feel like
So the women used to have to veil their faces to shield themselves from the priesthood, because they don't have the priesthood. That has been done away with, because remember how I told you, if it's kind of not progressive, they pray about it and God tells them things. So God's like, yeah, it's totally fine. Don't let the women do that anymore. So you get a new name, and that new name, after you go through this whole thing of creation story, and when you learn about the Golden Dawn, you go, oh, that's weird. But anyway, whatever, you go through this temple ceremony and you've got your new name, your new underwear, your little outfit on, all the things, and you get to the fake veil through the curtain, and you do this handshakes to get past the angels and sentinels, because you can't go to heaven if you don't know these. And after you're all done for yourself, your husband goes through and he gives his new name to a fake God. God calls him from the veil. And then he says, say his new name's Michael. And he says, Michael, come through the veil. But you can't hear it because you're not allowed to know. You're just a dumb lady. You can't hear that. And so then the lady comes through and gives her name to her husband. And mine was Abigail, which you're never supposed to utter, but they can have a big F you from me. And I'm just irritated about it. Also, I felt like this was so special because this is something you dream about your entire life, going to the temple. And this is your marriage, usually for women. For men, it's usually when they go on a mission. But this is usually done right as you're going to get married. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's my super special name. But what if I forget it? Because, oh my gosh, what if I forget? And my grandma goes, don't worry. You can just call the temple. I'm like, they know my super special name. And she's like, well, they give everybody the same name, like on the third Tuesday of the month. It's like Mary. And I was like, that sucks. Okay. Mm-hmm.
Really? They're just they ran out of ideas, I guess. I guess they're just trying to keep the train.
Too many people forgetting, I think.
Too many people forget.
So here we are. Remember, the husbands never reveal their name on this earthly planet to anyone else, ever again.
One thing I want to point out is real quick, if you don't mind. So that green cloth, it almost looks like that Masonic cloth that a lot of the master masons and the higher up masons will don in ceremony. It's not exactly, but it's just the way it's worn. It looks very.
It's fig leaves. Mm-hmm. And okay. Yes, it is very similar to the Masonic apron, which we will go backward here to. I got to put this in order because here it is. The green apron worn by the temple patrons is green, which is symbolic of life. The fig leaves on the green apron are fruit known for the countless multitudes of seeds. The green apron full of fruitful seeds is worn after Adam and Eve are cast out. And the funny thing is when you get the apron, you have it. It's folded up in your lap. You're not wearing it when you go in. And then Satan comes down and talks to Adam, and Adam's sad and he's crying out to the God of this world. And who answers? Not God. Satan does, because we do know that Satan is God of the world, the fallen world. And he shows up and he's like, hey, by the way, you're kind of naked. So maybe you want to put this on, basically. I mean, he says other nice things, but, and then the officiant says, everyone please stand and put on your aprons. And I always thought it was weird that we were doing what Lucifer said to do. I was like, why are we doing that? That seems so strange.
A little strange
Yeah.
indeed, man.
And then Satan's apron, currently in temple ceremonies, Satan wears a dark apron, which is a symbol of his powers and priesthoods. But before the 1960s, Satan's apron in the temple wore one with many symbols on it, including the all-seeing eye, the beehive, skull, crossbones, compasses, suns, moons, stars, etc. And my great-grandma verified this. So just so you know.
That is... Man, I think it's uncanny at this point. I mean, just even after what we're looking at here, and we're going through everything that you're showing, it's absolutely uncanny.
I mean, it's pretty much at this point, there's no denying what's happening here. So I mean, it's kind of funny to me that they still do plausible deniability. And this is my last little piece, and this is just like a little picture of the base of the LDS temple, which, by the way, LDS people are not supposed to do astrological things or astrological science. They're not supposed to have anything to do with astrology, ghosts, any of that stuff. And yet that's how everything was kind of put together, I guess. And also, this is actually at the base of the temple with all the moon phases, sun phases, and all the things. And this currently, I believe, is being scrubbed from existence. This is the Salt Lake City temple. It has sunstones, moonstones, cloudstones, pentagrams, all-seeing eyes, such and such, on and on. So I believe they are restoring the temple right now. And I have heard many people say, and I don't have proof, that they're scrubbing these symbols from the building.
I mean, I wouldn't doubt it. I mean, you know, they've altered quite a few things, and it's not out of the realm of possibility for them to alter something like this as well. I you know, even though we don't have proof and it's hearsay, you know, using the psychology that we've talked about before, I think it's very plausible they'd be doing that.
I think they will. And then if you look at these windows, are funny, like phallic.
Yeah.
Women, phallus, woman. Yeah.
Phallus, yeah.
And then,
no, that's
yep. And then we get to the spires, which I mentioned about stealing loosh and harnessing energy, blah, blah, blah. But that is, we don't want to go into racism because we'll be here all day. So I'm going to shut that. And if you have any questions before I shut the entire thing on any of these, or we can just talk in general, but
well, one thing I'm going to say, I think you did an amazing job explaining all of this. And I got to tell you what, Heidi, your presentation absolutely blew me the fuck away. Like, you know, like Mormonism, you know, like, cause I've gone through, you know, I've looked at and I've looked over pretty much every religion and philosophy. And the one that I can be 100% honest that I didn't really give too much of a look over, because I had some experiences in my childhood that gave me a little bit of a bad taste of it, you know, was Mormonism. And just to see this, these in-your-face comparisons, these uncanny magical alchemical symbols, the apron, the Masonic apron, from even the ritual video that was a ritual. That was not.
And I forgot to tell you one part, and I've got to put it in there, is when you get married in the temple, you get married in the garb. You don't get married in your beautiful wedding dress. You don't get married in what you dream of, and you kneel over an altar while you're looking into forever mirrors. Do you know what I'm talking about? Forever mirrors, where they're facing them and you can see on for eternity. And then they have you look in the mirror as you're saying these vows. And then it always makes me wonder now if we were channeling things onto us, because that is a very witchcraft move. And 100%. Mirrors are very important in the occult. And for you to look into the mirrors where they're doubling, tripling, whatever, and you say for time and all eternity, you'll be with this person, but that's not biblical. That's unbiblical. And so I don't know why they would do that. Yeah.
That's so when I even saw the layout where you were showing the cardinal
My
directions,
super
the
old
different
book.
moons.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
dude, that's very, to me, it's very pagan. It's very it's not what you would expect from a Judeo-Christian sect.
No.
It's not something that you would see within that. And I got to tell you this, that I think this needs to be brought to light, because you brought up quite a few things that that I don't really like to see happen. You have children being and revealing clothing in front of an audience, and you don't
Mhm.
know that they're recording it. That's number one.
Yeah,
That
I didn't like
definitely,
that. And
yeah,
that the
that's
parents have to
you,
literally sign for you to go do that. That's
that's
sketchy too.
that's disgusting. I mean, like, you
Mhm.
can't. And number two, that them using your free will against you,
Mhm.
practically. And I don't know if you know what that's called. So actually, there's two forms of this. It's karmic retribution, which is actually like I guess you could say, the rougher version of what's going on. And then you have revelation of the method. And what they're
Revelation.
doing is revelation of the method, just like you said before.
Mhm.
They're telling you a lie with a little bit of truth in it.
Yep.
And if you believe that, then you have given through your free will the acceptance of participating in these ceremonies and participating in this. And I think that's absolutely wrong, because
Well,
I
yeah.
yeah yeah no
And
and
when you get to the end of it all, I forgot to mention this too. People would say, "Well, why would they what's the point?" Right? Like why would they do all this? Okay. Well, remember that I mentioned Abraxas. If you know about Abraxas is a necromancer. And why do people practice? Why would you even do that? Why would you even practice necromancy? Why would you do anything, right? You're going to offer something to someone for what? Always they say it's for knowledge of the future, power, and money. Well, there's spires at the top, and we're doing these occultic ceremonies. And what did I call the prophet? What is his official title? Not from Heidi, from the church. Prophet, seer, and revelator. They
mm,
are absorbing that energy. And there's multiple other things, and I don't know how much time, because there's another facet. There's a second blessing that very few people know about. And I'm going to do a whole like slideshow on it, but I can sum it up.
for sure.
And it is the fact that the highest blessing that you can receive in church is, you grow up, and at 12 years old, men get the priesthood. So at 12 years old, a little boy has more authority than I do, okay, to give a blessing, to do things, whatever, by God. And so I always grew up knowing that. So when I was in the temple and I was naked under the poncho that they give you, and 9 months pregnant, because I'd already been married, my husband was a Catholic, so we had to wait.
Mhm.
And so I was like, wait, why are you in here? You're a lady. Like, what the hell is going on here? Like, go get the guy. Like, clearly you can't do this. And she's like, clearly you are naked. Like, you can't have a guy in here. And I'm like, well, I'm just saying you can't do the blessing. And she just looks at me and she says, it's different in the temple. And I never understood it. And I was pretty pissed off. I was like, no, this isn't going to work. Like, this lady can't do it. I don't know what's happening. Like, I was so confused. Anyway, you really want to leave. You've got this horrible anxiety, for me, driven feeling like this isn't where God is. Like, I just knew I wasn't in the place I needed to be, but also my whole entire family was there, and you're not going to leave. And so, okay. So I went through that whole situation, never understanding that ever, until I got to this one podcast. Cause I researched this to death. This is like a baby little scoop of what like my research is. And so, and I'll probably write a book. I mean, it's going to
I
probably
think you should.
happen.
I think you
Yeah.
should, based on everything that I'm seeing right now. I'm gonna co-sign on that. I think you should.
And so I'm gonna do it. So then later on, I'm listening to this podcast of this guy that got something called the second anointing. And I'm like, what the hell is that? He was one of the tops. So you've got the prophet, it's like a godhead, and the first and second counselor. And then you've got the quorum of the 12 and then the quorum of the 70. And these are all men. This is a very patriarchal thing.
Mhm.
And then, so to be considered for this extra special blessing, it's called making your place sure. It's basically saying you have been judged already on earth to be pure. And once your position is made sure and you receive this second anointing, you don't get judged by Jesus anymore. Okay. You could go kill someone tomorrow, but their excuse for that would be, well, they would never do that because they're so great and their position has been made sure. But like also, I mean, they could. And so their place is made sure by one of the quorum of the 12 saying this guy or girl, this couple deserve to get this extra special blessing. Okay, so they go through, and what happens is one of those 12 apostles comes and washes your feet in the temple and lays this new blessing upon you that's very rare. It's very rarely given out, by the way, to certain tithing payers. So brackets, yeah. And so when they get that, you go in the temple and then your wife receives it as well. But the final piece of the second anointing doesn't happen in the temple, and it doesn't happen by a man. This is sacred feminine energy as well at the top, because when they go home, that blessing is finished and sealed in the marital bedroom by the woman, and she is declared a priestess. I'm sorry, people. That's not Christian. I don't know what that is.
That's
Like,
that almost sounds like it's definitely a sex ritual is 100% what it is. It is a sex ritual.
And isn't it funny that Crowley comes up multiple times? Because what happened with Crowley? Like this channeling business, like I mentioned Muhammad already, he would have a fit of darkness. They were a non-written society. So he had two people follow him all around to memorize everything he said. And he would wake up and say, this is what the angels told me. And they'd write it in their head. And then later they wrote it down when he died because they were afraid that, they would forget. But like ultimately he made a book and it became a religion. But what happened? He married a 6-year-old. There was pedophilia involved there. He consecrated that marriage at 9 and polygamy. Mormons, Joseph Smith gets binged for like the polygamy thing, but they never remember that he was actually sleeping with other people's wives that were already married. Like this was also polyamory. So he was sending people off on missions and sleeping with their wives. And so remember, he woke up, he saw God the Father and the Son. He had a channeled book. He wrote it all down. It became a religion. What happened with Crowley? Crowley met Aiwass. He didn't have to see an angel because he just didn't care. He saw an alien, and it told him to write a book, and it was channeled, and he wrote it down, and it became the Book of the Law, which became Thelema and a lot of other things. We can go Scientology. What about the Babylon workings out in the desert? Like Parsons, and it's all the same damn story, but every single time, even with John Dee, it's always some kink, right? It's never just like, oh yeah, here's the information because it's for the good of humans. It's like sleep with her wife, switch wives and do bad stuff in the desert, do other things, like all this stuff. It's always sexual. It always ends up sexual every single time. So that's not what angels from God do. That's just not. No. It's not. Yeah.
That's so man, my mind is blown. I'm sorry. I'm like, holy shit. Like this is
that's
like
how I felt too.
Yeah, I was like, holy shit, man, holy shit. Well, Miss Heidi, look, we're gonna have to do a round 2, but I'm definitely gonna have to start winding down on this for sure. Yeah. So I'm gonna tell you what, I am profoundly impressed, and not only am I impressed, I am just like I'm blown away. I'm blown away. This makes me, I don't regret not taking a deeper look at Mormonism at the time, because at that time, my perspective wasn't what it is now. And I feel like now hearing it from you and having my background on this stuff that I do after almost 2 decades of looking through this stuff, I feel like I can appreciate it more and I can understand it more. Like, you know what I mean? And because just basically I'm seeing all of these symbols, all Seal of Solomon, I'm seeing sigils. I'm like, I know exactly what all of this stuff is. Like,
look up the seal of Solomon is their patriarchal Melchizedek. Look up the Melchizedek priesthood sign. You'll die. It's the Star of Rampham. I'm telling you, there's so much that I can't even, like, I had to cut it off at some point because I was like, I'm going to talk about this forever. Like, and it just goes on and on. Yeah.
Well, that is, man. So I'm gonna say this. Let's roll it up real quick. I want you to stick around just for a
Yep.
minute after we
You
sign
got it.
off. Heidi, I have the two links. I have your
Awesome.
YouTube link and your
Yes.
Apple Podcast link in the bottom of both the Rumble and the YouTube
Perfect.
description. Yeah, I always do my guess right. Anytime you got a link, I make sure it's
Yes,
there for sure.
definitely.
And but if there's any other place that they can find you and look up your research and look
Absolutely.
up your stuff, why don't you inform them?
Perfect. I am on Spotify as well. I think it's nice there because you can see the video. And YouTube's good, but I can't put everything on YouTube that I want to because it's YouTube. And so they censor the crap out of me there. So I would say Spotify is a little bit better for some of the stuff that I can't put out, like especially on Tim Ballard. So definitely go there and check that out. Patreon, I do 2 extra episodes a month at minimum. And I do specifically one with another ex-Mormon who is an atheist and completely a liberal. And it's super fun. So we're just
I'm
on
gonna
the
have to see
opposite
that.
side. Yes.
I'm gonna
And
have
we
to
talk
see
about
that.
everything. Yeah. And actually we do Mormons, mayhem, and murder. And so basically you'd be shocked to know, well, maybe not, but like Nazis are involved. Ted Bundy was a Mormon. Fun fact. There's all these weird murders, like blood atonement. We get into all kinds of crazy stuff. And
That
so,
is
yeah.
so nuts. That is so nuts. Well,
Yep.
guys, I think to my listeners, I want to give a shout out to Don and the Lion. You guys are always here. Thanks for being here, guys. You are the
Hi.
best. Yeah, I always love to see their faces here. It's amazing. And I think we can sum it up as this, man. Like, there's not a whole lot of differences between Masonry and Mormonism. there's not a whole lot of
2 less
differences.
handshakes.
Yeah,
2
yeah.
less
So
handshakes. Yeah. Yeah.
and
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 I
I
think
think
ultimately, I think there's a joke saying that Joseph Smith made Masonry for the whole family because he let women in and he let women do these rites. And I'm sorry to say, I think that's what got him killed. Also, fun fact, William Morgan and the William Morgan affair, Joseph Smith married his widow.
wow. Well, guys, we're definitely gonna have a round 2 with Heidi in the future. So I will be back next week, same time. Actually, speaking of Don and Spinja are my guests next week. So they have the After Dark podcast on FKN, and Spinja has her own show she's coming up with, and we're going to be having them on to talk about their journeys and what's been going on and how they embarked on their awakening, spiritual evolution as well. So everybody, I want to thank you again for joining me for another BG-Cast Wednesday live podcast. I will catch you guys next week, and definitely check out Heidi's work, man. I'm blown away, and I'm sure some of you are. You guys take care. Have a good night.
Bye-bye.